Hey guys, today I want to talk about some of the best special weapons for DPS. Bungie already released their plans for the changes that we're going to be seeing to weapons, and they're pretty much all affecting our ag clear weapons, and only a couple changes to our DPS weapons. So this video should be something relevant all the way into at least the Final Shape raid, which will be coming in just the next couple of weeks. Anyway, I've also got some exciting news about the channel I'll be sharing with you guys in a little bit, but this intro is getting pretty long, so I want to go ahead and just get the video started. So let's get into it. So the first weapon I want to talk about is also pretty much the most obvious, and that is going to be Izanagi's Burden. This is an exotic, and not all the weapons we're going to cover here are going to be exotic. However, Izanagi's Burden is really just a staple of DPS in general, and it is also a special weapon, and I would consider it probably just overall to be the best special DPS weapon in the game, just because of how versatile and powerful it is. The entire benefit behind Izanagi's Burden is that it lets you sort of preload a bunch of damage into a quick burst. If you have the Catalyst, you take 4 shots, you load it into 1 bullet, and it does the damage of 6 sniper shots all at once, which is a very large amount. It's almost as much as a rocket, or at least a smaller rocket or a weaker rocket. And ever since it came out, it's been being used in damage rotations for its burst DPS and its ease of use. So it's something that sort of helped casuals get into doing rotations, but it's also a very powerful tool for advanced players to still be using that in more advanced rotations. The most common way to use it is pretty much just cycling it back and forth with a heavy ammo weapon, either a grenade launcher or a rocket generally, which has auto-loading holster, so that way while you're honing the shot, your auto-loading holster is going off, and you can animation cancel the hone to edge reload by shooting your rocket, and you basically just can go back and forth, and it is super effective. It's one of the best ways to increase your overall damage, and it lets you do damage a little bit quicker a lot of the time if you don't have any extreme reload perks for something like rocket launchers. Now, moving on from Izanagi's Burden specifically, I want to talk about grenade launchers, because basically all of the non-waveframe grenade launchers have some sort of use. Some are better than others. Things like Wilderflight Mountaintop are obviously basically the best in slot when it comes to grenade launchers for DPS right now. But basically, grenade launchers can fill a similar role as Izanagi's Burden while having access to auto-loading holster themselves, and obviously being a legendary weapon instead of an exotic weapon. So they can be used in a sort of a different purpose, or even being used in conjunction with Izanagi's Burden to make the rotation even better. On their own, similarly to rockets, they're not really that great as DPS weapons just because of the amount of time you have to spend reloading them. However, if you make good use of perks like auto-loading holster and you're using other weapons during that downtime, then you get a very good value out of them, and they really become one of the better weapons when it comes to DPS from the special slot. And being legendary, you don't have to put a very large commitment into it. They're also super ammo efficient, so it doesn't really hurt if you use them to clear out majors and stuff before the actual damage phase. There's just a lot of things going for grenade launchers in general. And for the next up, I want to talk about Merciless, but really quickly before we do that, I want to talk about what I talked about in the intro and tell you guys I am releasing my Discord server. I was originally going to release it at 5,000 subscribers, but I decided to release it early so that we can talk to each other when Final Shape drops and share our discoveries quicker. But there's going to be a ton of super high quality channels here in the Lazy Cord, so make sure you join. The first person to join and talk in general gets an exclusive first chatter role, and the first 100 people to join will get a first 100 role, so make sure you join as early as possible. Getting back on topic with Merciless. Merciless is a staple. We've actually covered it before on the channel as its own video. Merciless has a lot of applications, and it's just super potent as an individual weapon. Merciless is kind of an odd case because it's a fusion rifle, which as a weapon type really isn't that good at DPS overall. They're very easy to use, but the amount of damage they do just isn't very high. But Merciless sets itself apart by having 2 of the most absolutely insanely powerful perks that we have on any weapon in the entire game. It's just amazing. So first of all, we have Impetus. This is the smaller of the 2 insane perks, and Impetus is a 50% damage buff for some amount of time. I don't know what it is, but it's enough time to unload your entire magazine. So it's not just for like a couple of shots. And to get this, all you have to do is kill an enemy and then reload with it. So it's often used in solo content or low man content where you can more easily get kills during damage phase. You just kill an enemy, you get a super fast reload while you're doing it as a hidden perk on Merciless, and then you have a 50% damage buff for the rest of the magazine. And basically people will just shoot down the 7 shots after they reloaded. They use the last one to kill an enemy, and they can unload it super fast because the rate of fire increase from the following perk stays through reloads. And the perk I'm talking about is Conserve Momentum, which adds up to be, I want to say, a 400 50% fire rate increase when you have it fully maxed, which is basically the same fire rate as a shotgun, but it's on a fusion rifle with a fusion rifle's range and with a 50% damage buff stacked on top of it. Having a 400% fire rate and 50% damage buff on any weapon is going to make it absolutely insane. You could probably even make some primaries viable with those numbers. So if you ever need more total damage in your larger teams, or if you're in a smaller team and you just need more damage and you need to deliver it quickly with special weapons, running out of heavy, whatever the case is, give Merciless a shot. It is really powerful. And looking at our fourth option, this is a little bit more of a niche one, but I still think it is worth it because it is so powerful, and that is going to be the Fourth Horseman. So the Fourth Horseman is essentially a DPS powerhouse. It doesn't have a lot of total damage. The overall amount of damage of all of its shots combined aren't that high compared to other weapons. However, it delivers its damage extremely quickly. This means that on its own, it's not all that amazing just because you're going to run out of steam super quickly. However, when you're running it with other weapons, it's a great way to just ramp up the speed of the damage you're doing with other weapons, whether you're doing it and then leading into a slower burning weapon, or if you're using it in some form of rotation, like I like to do using Cascade Point shotguns and Cascade Point grenade launchers alongside it. I know that Fourth Horseman sort of has the reputation of being the cheater gun, where people are using the net limiting software, so they're cheating, and they're basically shooting slugs out of the Fourth Horseman, and it's just something that kind of insta-kills bosses. I think that's super lame, but Fourth Horseman just as a regular gun being used normally is actually super effective, and I highly recommend it, especially if you have any sort of way of instantly reloading your weapons, because the Fourth Horseman is sort of similar to rockets and grenade launchers in that it is basically only limited by its reload speed, because it has absolutely insane DPS otherwise. And the last main weapon in this list is going to be the Supremacy. So I really like the Supremacy, and I know a lot of endgame players really like the Supremacy as well, so if you're somebody who's not familiar with the Supremacy, you're definitely going to want to get this. So the Supremacy has two main roles that you should be looking out for, and to my knowledge, it is the only sniper with these fourth column perks, and that is really what sets the Supremacy apart from any other sniper, because basically, every other sniper in the game is really boring, and it's just got some configuration of like 4 times the charm or auto-loading holster or something like that, mixed with either firing line, vorpal, or focus cherry. You know, there's not really a lot of variety among snipers. Otherwise, those are the meta perks, that's what you use, and they're not really all that amazing, then they're all really similar, but the Supremacy sets itself apart. So what you want to look out for is kinetic tremors or bait and switch mixed with rewind rounds in the third column. You could also make an argument for a lead for gold one for general content, but when it comes to DPS, rewind rounds is a big deal on this weapon. So kinetic tremors I think is the more popular role of Supremacy, and it is super powerful. The actual effect it has if you're shooting it 2 rounds at a time and waiting for kinetic tremors to wear off is essentially a 65% damage buff to those 2 shots. However, it has the cooldown that it has, and only one person on the team can be using it, so it is a little bit limited in that regard. It's absolutely amazing in DPS rotations because it is a very fast thing you can do. It has a relatively low cost to a damage rotation. It doesn't take a lot of your time. You can just tack it onto anything, so to speak. And it also adds forgiveness to snipers, which otherwise do almost no damage if you miss a headshot. Now, the other big role for Supremacy is with bait and switch. And bait and switch on a 140 RPM sniper is actually a really solid chunk of sustained DPS. According to the Aegis spreadsheet, which I'll have linked in the description as well, which is the go-to choice for people to figure out the numbers that weapons are dealing in an objective way. Pretty much everybody uses it as the standard. According to that, it does 130,000 DPS, which is 30,000 more than, Thunderlord. And Thunderlord isn't great, but 130k DPS from a single special weapon with nothing else involved is really good. It's just very powerful, and that is a very good DPS number, especially on a sniper, which obviously has practically infinite range. So Supremacy, I actually keep one of both roles in case I need one or the other. It's a super good weapon, and I highly recommend it for everyone's arsenal, at least the Kinetic Tremors version, because it's so versatile. And lastly, I want to do a little honorable mention. I know this is technically the 6th one, but basically just shotguns. Shotguns are kind of hard to use because of their range, but they by far have the best overall DPS of any of the special weapon types. Anything from just simple Vorpal weapon rolls for using in rotations, or things like Cascade Point getting more advanced, using Surrounded if you can utilize it. Shotguns by far can do the damage fastest as long as you set them up for success, so have a look into that, and I have a video covering basically all of the things about shotguns for DPS if you're interested in that, so I will link that down in the description as well. Anyway, that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.